Hazbin Hotel is Bible fan fiction. It takes Judeo-Christian mythology and gives it the good old what-if treatment. Prominent characters include Lucifer and Adam, but while Lilith and Eve are both mentioned in the introduction, we don't see Lilith until the final scene and don't see Eve at all. To be clear, this isn't a failing of the show. It has a runtime of fewer than 200 minutes and already covers plenty of ground in that time. However, I would love to see Eve in the show at some point, and I have some fan fiction-y ideas of my own as to how this could be done. The past few years have seen a tremendous number of ancient stories retold for the modern audience. The best I've seen is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, and I've done a whole video on how it was updated and why those changes work. The gist is that ancient audiences looked for different things in their media than we do and had different cultural preferences and sensibilities about things like what makes a good hero. For a long time, stories about strong guys doing fighting good were the pinnacle of storytelling, but that's no longer the only thing or even the main thing we look for in a hero. We like characters who are strong, sure, but also knowledgeable, kind, wise, good, self-sacrificing, and these traits don't always map onto ancient heroes. Sometimes we change aspects about an ancient hero to make them more palatable to a modern audience, and sometimes we select a side character from an ancient myth that embodies more modern heroic traits and promote them to main character status. This trend in storytelling, coupled with my recent deep dive into Hazbin Hotel, got me thinking, what if we turn some Bible stories inside out? One of the first things that ever happened to people, according to the Bible, is that Eve is given a choice: life or knowledge. The serpent walks up to Eve and asks, "Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" And Eve replies, "We may eat from the trees in the garden, but God did say you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it or you will die." Having clarified her understanding of the issue, the serpent corrects her, "You will not certainly die. For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." This setup is a very recognizable dynamic between three characters, Eve, God, and the serpent. Modern audiences love it when characters who have been kept in the dark choose knowledge of reality over ignorance, even and especially when it makes their lives harder. The most famous recent example of this is The Matrix, in which Tom Anderson is offered a red pill to understand the paradigm and do something about it, or the blue pill to go back to living his old life. Obviously, we want him to see how deep the rabbit hole goes because we as the audience want to see how deep it goes. This was so effective that it became a visual shorthand in media for decision making. For example, in the Barbie movie, when she chooses between the sandals and the real world, or the high heels and the Barbie world. It was also co-opted by a subsection of the manosphere who fancy themselves smart and correct for seeing through the lie of feminism. This story resonates with people, lots of people, not just men who hate women, because it's about figuring out how the world actually works. In our day-to-day lives, we see so little of the forces that shape our lives that it can be difficult to really understand any of these systems. We hear so many narratives to explain how the world works that it can be exhausting to figure out which one is true or to what extent they're all a little true. No matter which one or ones you accept, it can feel alienating and disempowering to realize how little control we really have in a system that's so much bigger than any of us. So it's cathartic to watch someone get some answers and be able to do something about the mess they're in. With this in mind, let's return to the Bible. Eve lives in a magical garden, Eden, where everything is fine. Nothing is good, nothing is bad. All her needs are taken care of. She has a husband. It's fine. But this magical garden lacks something, like Matrix and Barbie world, because it's not real. The people who live there are purposefully kept as ignorant as the beasts of the land and the fishes of the sea and the birds of the sky. As a modern day audience, I don't find that very satisfying. I don't want her to stay in Eden. I want her to figure out what's going on so she can take control of her destiny. What if the serpent isn't trying to trick her, but trying to give her the tools she needs to free herself, like Morpheus and Weird Barbie? You can't understand until you choose to see the bigger picture, and the snake is offering her that knowledge and understand that choice. Framing a retelling of Genesis chapter 3, the fall, in this way prioritizes the sensibilities of a modern audience. We want to know that there's a system out there that's messing up our lives, something we can blame for everything that goes wrong, and maybe even something that can be fixed. This storyline would turn a character who's usually seen as a scapegoat for everything bad in the world into the hero we need to take control of our lives. The problem with this setup is that it is, at its core, a critique of God in heaven, and for it to get off the ground, it needs a showrunner that's okay critiquing God in heaven in this way. Fortunately for us, Medrano has already positioned heaven as the antagonist and gone so far as to highlight the fact that Lucifer gave us free will.
They got gifted free will, and look what they did with it. Everything's terrible.
It's only one step farther to suggest that Eve is a hero whose strength is seeing through heaven's platitudes. This Eve could be an incredible ally to Charlie, and I hope we see her, or something similar to her, in the seasons to come.